Okay, so you've brought in like a whole stack of stuff
Yeah.
all about this Expressive Therapies Continuum,
Uh-huh.
or ETC,
ETC.
and we are ready for like a deep dive into this.
Yes, we are.
So this isn't just about looking at cool artwork, right?
No.
The ETC is like a framework to think about how people take in information,
Right.
how they process stuff,
Mhm.
and then how they express themselves,
Uh-huh.
but particularly in art therapy.
Yeah. And in creative ways.
But kind of like it gives us a map to follow how we go from just experiencing things with our senses
Mm-hmm.
to like complex thinking,
Yeah.
symbolic thinking, all through like the act of doing art.
Yeah. Yeah, like the making of the art.
Okay, so we're talking about the ETC, and
Yes.
we're bringing together like what we actually create when we make art.
Mm-hmm.
How are our brains actually working as we make it?
Right.
And even like the materials we pick out
Uh-huh.
and how all those things connect.
Yes.
So that's our mission here today.
Okay.
Like a deep dive into this framework. Where did it come from? What are the basic pieces of it?
Mm-hmm.
And like, how can it help us understand people better?
Right.
And even like the whole therapy process.
Yeah.
We're not going to just like skim the surface here.
No.
We're going to really dig deep and find some cool connections and stuff that we can actually use.
You got it.
Because your sources have a lot of good information here.
Yes, they do.
We've got definitions. We've got a history of it.
Right.
We've got breakdowns of each of the parts.
Mm-hmm.
Kinesthetic, sensory,
Yeah.
perceptual, affective.
Which is like the bridge
It's a bridge.
between the two.
Okay.
So it's a big, important piece.
And then the harder ones.
Cognitive, symbolic,
Yeah.
and then that overall creative level.
All right. So let's go back in time.
Way back.
Okay. Who are like the main people who came up with this ETC?
Well, there's some big names here.
Okay.
Like, we can think about Florence Kane
Okay.
as kind of like the grandmother of the ETC.
Okay. The grandmother.
Yeah, and then there's Margaret Nomberg. Okay.
She's like the mother of art therapy in general.
Wow.
But there are other people too who added important ideas to the ETC.
Okay.
Like Edith Kramer.
Yeah.
She's known for her idea of art as therapy.
Okay.
And she thought that even those like, repeated images,
Yeah.
the simple ones that people make over and over again in their art,
Mm-hmm.
those can be like defense mechanisms. They can be ways that people manage those difficult feelings.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah. And then you've got Eleanor Ullman.
Okay.
She was really focused on how making art can be like bringing order out of chaos.
Ah.
Bringing structure when you feel overwhelmed by your experience.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, it's a cool idea.
Okay, and then we've got Victor Lowenfeld.
Yes.
He was all about creative learning.
Right.
And how that's connected to the different stages of like growing up.
Exactly.
It's cool to see how all these different ideas came together
Uh-huh.
to build this bigger picture.
Right. But the ETC as like, a formal concept
Mhm.
didn't really take off right away, right?
No, it did. It first popped up in 1978.
1978.
Yeah, and the reaction was, well, kind of mixed.
Mixed.
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, some people were like, how does this fit in with what we already do in art therapy?
Okay.
It might have seemed a little like dense or complicated, like too much.
Yeah.
But then Vija Loosbrink came along,
Okay.
and she really expanded on it in her book in 1990.
For
She
sure.
really like broke down all those levels and made it more clear.
Okay.
And the really important thing is that the ideas behind the ETC, they've been getting more popular over time.
Really?
Yeah, especially as we've learned more about, information processing and how our brains work.
So it's like science catching up.
Yeah, exactly. Loosbrink even said that in 2004.
Yeah.
It's cool how something about creative expression also makes sense in terms of like cognitive science.
It's really interesting how that all comes together.
It is.
And, one of your sources even has a story
Oh, yeah.
from the author.
Right, yeah.
Who was actually into cognitive behavioral therapy.
Yeah.
But then they saw how powerful it was when clients made their own art.
Yeah.
It shows how special this approach is.
Exactly. Bring something new.
Okay, so let's break it down.
Let's do it.
We've got these main parts of the ETC,
Uh-huh.
and it's like a hierarchy.
Yeah, it is.
We start with the kinesthetic sensory level,
Right.
which is like the most basic,
Uh-huh.
and then we go up to the cognitive symbolic.
Yeah, the most complex.
Yeah, the complex stuff.
Right.
But basic doesn't mean bad,
No, not at all.
because we've got that perceptual affective level in the middle,
Right.
like a bridge.
Exactly. A bridge.
Okay, so that's important.
A big part of it.
And the really cool thing is that a healthy person
Uh-huh.
can use all these levels
Yeah.
to think about things.
Right, to process information.
So no one level is better than another.
No, they're all useful.
They each give us different ways to understand our experience.
Mhm.
Okay, so let's start with that first one.
Kinesthetic sensory.
Yeah. What's that all about?
So this level is all about that direct experience,
Yeah.
like through our senses and our movements.
Huh?
Like, think about how little kids
Okay.
explore the world.
Mm-hmm.
They're touching and moving and tasting and seeing and hearing.
Yeah.
Paget, the psychologist,
Okay.
he called this the sensoromotor stage.
Okay.
And that's where kids learn by actually like physically interacting with the environment.
Okay. So they're really in it.
They're in it.
Yeah.
So at this level, in art therapy,
Uh-huh.
the arts stuff that you use, it's often experienced just for like its feel, its texture, or just as a way to move.
Uh-huh.
Like your source gives example of a little kid banging a marker on paper.
Yeah.
They're not really trying to draw something.
Oh.
They're just into the physical action and how it feels.
Interesting.
Or like finger painting.
Okay.
They probably don't care about making a picture. They just like how the paint feels on their hands.
Okay.
It's like a really basic way of experiencing things.
So like really primal.
Primal
Yeah.
and in the moment.
Okay.
And it's not just for kids either.
Oh, really?
Yeah, your sources say that being connected to that kinesthetic and sensory stuff,
Okay.
it's really important for everybody.
Interesting.
Because it's like the foundation for how we understand our emotions
Wow.
and even how we form memories.
Okay.
Think about Antonio Damasio.
Uh-huh.
He's the guy who showed how connected our bodies and our emotions are. And then you've got Lou Sprink, Siegel,
Yeah.
Hartzell.
Uh-huh.
They all talk about how important this link is.
Okay.
And in therapy, this level can be really healing.
Okay.
Because it helps people get in touch with their natural rhythms.
Okay.
And release that built-up energy, like that physical tension we all carry around.
Oh, yeah.
And sometimes something cool happens. Like people suddenly become aware of a shape or even a feeling just from moving their bodies.
Wow. So it just kind of emerges.
Yeah, it emerges.
Oh, okay.
We call that an emergent function.
That's cool.
So what kind of activities are we talking about here?
Give me some examples.
Okay, so like pounding clay, kneading dough,
Mm-hmm.
really feeling those materials.
Okay.
Or even shaping clay to music.
Oh, wow.
Like matching your movements to the sounds, painting to music, where you just let the music guide your hand, carving wood or stone,
Okay.
where you're really like shaping the material,
Uh-huh.
or even something simple like just hammering nails into a board,
Wow.
something soft.
Yeah.
So it's all about the physical action.
Okay, yeah.
And you said something about this leading to emotions.
Right. Like, how does that work?
Well, if you move in a really energetic way,
Okay.
you might start feeling excited or like energized or even angry.
Wow.
But if you move slowly and rhythmically,
Okay.
you might feel calmer and more relaxed. So this is super useful in therapy,
Okay.
especially for people who have trouble, figuring out what they're feeling.
Yeah.
So a therapist might start by asking them about what they feel physically. Like, what does the clay feel like in your hands when you pound it?
Okay.
And then later they might gently ask about any feelings that come up.
Interesting.
And sometimes for people who are really disconnected from their emotions, doing a really physical activity can actually energize their emotions and help them feel them more.
Wow. So it's like their body knows stuff that their mind doesn't.
Exactly.
That's wild.
It's pretty cool.
Okay, so that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Sometimes we got to get our bodies involved to figure stuff out.
Right.
So next up, we've got the perceptual affective level.
Okay.
And you called this a bridge.
Exactly.
So what's it bridging?
It connects those basic sensory and movement experiences to that more complex thinking and symbolic stuff. And a big idea here is this idea of good gestalts.
Okay, what's a gestalt?
So Gestalt psychology showed us that our brains like to organize information into wholes.
Okay.
So we want to find patterns and stability and completeness in what we see.
Interesting.
Think about how kids are drawn to those symmetrical designs,
Good.
like mandalas. It's
Right.
like we're all looking for order and balance.
Makes sense.
We're wired for it.
So we move from just feeling to actually like seeing shapes and patterns in what we experience.
Right.
And your sources talk about this thing called the golden section.
Yeah.
What is that?
It's like this special proportion that you find in nature and art and architecture.
Like a ratio.
Yeah, kind of. And it's like mathematically beautiful. And researchers like Doxey and Arnheim, they say that we're drawn to it
Interesting.
because we like that sense of harmony and limit.
With boundaries.
Yeah, like boundaries. And that idea of limits, it's really important for the healing part of the perceptual component.
Okay, so how does that work?
Eleanor Ullman.
Yeah.
She said that having structure can actually help calm that inner chaos, all those overwhelming thoughts and feelings.
Yeah.
So when you arrange things in a pleasing way, like when you make a good gestalt, it can make you feel more satisfied and put together inside.
Interesting.
It's like that principle of isomorphism.
Okay, isomorphism.
Yeah, like when you listen to calming music.
Right.
And it actually slows your heart rate.
Oh, wow.
The external rhythm changes your internal state.
Cool.
So that's why coloring mandalas can be so relaxing.
Yeah.
It gives you that structure and containment that we all need.
So it's not just about making something pretty.
No.
It's about how it makes you feel inside.
Exactly.
Okay, so what about that emergent function at this level?
Oh, yeah.
What's new here?
So here you get this ability to see things more clearly.
Okay.
To make sense of all that sensory information.
Yeah.
And then that can help you actually put words to your experiences.
Okay.
And think about them in new ways.
Yeah.
And ultimately, it helps you understand yourself better.
Awesome.
And your sources have some great examples.
Like what?
So there's this thing called the changing point of view exercise.
Okay.
So you draw a problem,
Okay.
and then you zoom in on one tiny detail,
Mm-hmm.
and then you zoom out and look at the whole thing.
Okay.
And it shows you how your perspective totally changes how you think and feel.
Oh, it's interesting.
Yeah. And another example
Yeah.
is using drawing in therapy with couples or families to help them see each other's points of view.
Mm-hmm.
Like Siegel and Hartzell talk about that.
Okay.
They call it representational diversity.
That's a good one.
Yeah, so it's all about getting a more objective view
Okay.
and maybe not reacting so much with your emotions.
Interesting.
But what if someone gets stuck at this level?
Okay, what happens then?
Well, your sources talk about that too. Like some people might be so overwhelmed with their feelings
Okay.
that they can't step back and see things clearly.
Yeah.
Or they might just stay in that kinesthetic mode, like always moving, to avoid actually looking at the form or meaning of things.
Interesting.
And then on the other hand, some people might get too focused on the perceptual stuff.
Okay.
Like they might make the same simple drawings over and over again as a way to protect themselves from difficult thoughts and feelings.
Oh, wow.
Like Lowenfeld saw with kids who were always copying cartoons.
Oh, yeah.
So the therapist's job is to help people find that balance between all these different ways of processing.
That makes sense.
So within this perceptual affective level,
Oh.
we've also got that affective component,
Yeah.
which is all about emotions.
Right.
So how's that different from the perceptual part, which is more about the form of things?
Yeah. How are they different?
Well, the main difference is what you're focusing on. So the perceptual part is all about structure and containment and organizing things.
Okay.
But the affective part,
Yeah.
it's all about the emotion itself.
Okay.
Like what you're feeling and how you express that through art and affect. That's like the whole package of emotions.
Okay.
It includes your thoughts, your body sensations, everything.
So it's like letting those feelings out.
Yeah, just letting it flow.
And expressing them. Okay.
So making art can definitely bring up emotions.
Right.
But when a therapist works with the affective component,
Yeah.
they really encourage people to express those feelings directly.
Interesting.
So they might use specific prompts to help people connect with their emotions, and they might offer those fluid media,
What's that?
like paint or pastels,
Okay.
which are less structured.
Right.
And they encourage people to use vivid colors because color has always been linked to emotions.
Yeah.
Researchers like Burin and Feldman have talked about that. And even the way you make lines in a drawing, like Batensky and Martin talked about, can show different feelings.
Cool.
Like think about those abstract expressionists.
Okay.
They used color as like their main language to show how they felt.
Wow. That's really cool.
It is.
And your sources talk about how color has been used in psychological tests.
Yeah, like the Rorschach
Uh-huh.
and the Lusher color test to try and understand someone's emotions. Exactly.
So there's definitely a connection.
Yeah, a strong one.
Okay, so the healing part of the affective component,
Right.
it's not just about getting your feelings out.
No,
Right.
it's about learning what those feelings are
Okay.
and how to express them in a good way.
Right.
And then you can feel more in control of them.
So art is like a safe way to communicate.
Yes.
When you can't find the words, it's like learning the language of emotions.
Exactly.
Okay, so that's really valuable.
It is.
Okay, so now we get to the cognitive component.
The thinking part.
Yeah, this is where our brains really get to work.
Right.
Okay, so what's happening here?
So the cognitive component is all about those conscious mental processes,
Okay.
like planning out what you're going to make,
Hmm.
deciding on the materials and techniques,
Right.
figuring out the steps,
Yeah.
and problem solving as you go.
So it's like a lot of thinking involved.
Yeah,
Right.
Lou Brink described it like that.
Okay.
And a big part of this is how we internalize the art stuff,
What do you mean?
like how we start to understand how different materials work
Yeah.
and what effects they'll make.
Uh-huh.
So we can think about what might happen even before we start making art.
So we're visualizing it in our minds.
Exactly.
Okay.
So it's less about feeling and more about thinking and planning.
Interesting.
And this component is different from the others.
Okay, how so?
Because it involves thinking about the past and the future, not just the present moment. And your sources talk about how it helps teenagers develop that more complex, abstract thinking.
Oh, wow.
What we call formal operational thought.
Yeah.
And doing cognitive art activities can even help older adults keep their brains sharp.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, it's really important for everyone.
Okay, so how does this cognitive stuff through art help people heal and grow?
Well, the healing function here is that you learn how to take those insights from making art and apply them to other parts of your life.
Oh, wow.
And you get better at problem solving.
Okay.
Because you're actually practicing it. And for people who are impulsive, like those with ADHD, learning to plan and think things through in art can really help them control their behavior.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, and it can also help people who are really emotional to reframe those negative thoughts by working with them in a more structured way.
That makes a lot of sense.
It does.
So what kind of art activities are we talking about here?
Okay, so think about stuff that requires planning and making decisions, like collages, where you have to pick images that fit a theme, or like pro and con collages,
Oh, wow.
where you show both sides of an issue,
Interesting.
or even drawing a floor plan of your childhood home.
Oh, yeah.
You have to use your memory and think about space and plan it out.
That's cool.
Or you can make a timeline of important events in your life, or cognitive maps.
What are those?
They're like visual representations of your relationships or your inner world.
Wow.
So these activities really make you think and analyze.
Yeah, they do.
And the therapist plays a big role here too.
Right. How so?
Well, they'll ask questions and have discussions that encourage people to think about their process instead of asking why.
Yeah.
Which can sometimes make people feel judged.
Right.
They might ask about the steps the person took or how they could change their approach.
Interesting.
Or they might just say, tell me more about that to get the person talking.
So it's about encouraging them to reflect.
Exactly.
Okay, so what comes out of all this cognitive work?
Well, the emergent function here is that you get better at creative problem solving.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. And you can use both logic and imagination and even symbols to help you think through tough problems.
That's really cool.
It is.
Okay, so that brings us to the symbolic component.
The deep stuff.
Yeah, this is where we get into those deeper meanings.
Right.
Okay, so what are symbols all about?
So a symbol, it's not just a literal thing, like Carl Jung said. It goes beyond the obvious.
Okay.
It's not just a sign that points to something specific.
Yeah.
A symbol can represent something or even change its meaning.
Interesting.
And your sources say that our ability to use symbols is what makes us human. Like it sets us apart from other animals.
That's powerful.
It is.
So it's about tapping into that part of us
Yeah.
that we don't always understand.
Like those feelings and ideas that are hard to put into words.
Exactly.
So symbols can help us learn more about ourselves beyond just the concrete stuff. They're like a bridge between our inner world and the world outside.
Yeah.
And symbols can handle ambiguity and paradox in a way that words sometimes can't.
Interesting.
And symbols have always been connected to spirituality and growth.
Right.
So as we grow up, we get better at understanding symbols and using them.
Yeah.
And sometimes looking at a symbol from different angles or even changing it on purpose can lead to some really cool insights.
Oh, wow.
So it's important to work with both our own personal symbols and those universal ones that everyone knows.
Yeah.
Like archetypes.
Yeah.
To really get to know ourselves.
That's deep.
It is.
Okay, so how does exploring symbols help people heal?
So symbols can have this thing called a regressive quality.
Okay, regressive.
Yeah, it means they can show us our unconscious desires
Uh-huh.
or those old conflicts from the past,
Right.
or even parts of us that are stuck in childhood.
Interesting.
So it helps us understand where our meanings and patterns come from.
So it's like going back in time.
Yeah, kinda.
Okay.
But symbols can also be progressive.
Okay, progressive.
Yeah, meaning they can point to our hopes for the future
Uh-huh.
and our potential for growth
Okay.
and the direction we're headed.
Wow.
So it's important to look at both of these sides.
The regressive and the progressive.
Exactly.
To really heal.
Right, because it helps us understand our past and also see what's possible for our future.
That makes a lot of sense.
So symbols are powerful tools
They are.
for finding solutions and becoming whole.
Okay, so give me some examples of how to work with symbols in art.
Okay, so you could make collages with those archetypal images. You know, the ones that represent universal themes?
Uh-huh.
Or you could sculpt a symbol out of clay
Okay.
that represents something important about yourself.
Cool.
Or make masks
Okay.
to explore different parts of your personality.
Yeah.
Or to bring together those opposite parts of yourself, like the good and the bad, or the masculine and the feminine.
Interesting.
Or you could do dream amplification.
What's that?
That's where you explore the meanings of your dreams through art.
Oh, wow.
And you could even create your own coat of arms.
Like a knight?
Yeah, kind of.
Okay.
But it represents your values and who you are.
That's really cool.
Yeah. So these activities really get you thinking about those deeper meanings.
Yeah, they do.
So we've gone through all these different components.
Uh-huh.
Each one is a unique way of experiencing things.
Yeah.
But now we have to talk about the creative level.
Okay.
Where does that fit in?
Yeah.
So the creative level is like the big picture.
Yeah.
It includes all the other components.
Mhm.
It's about our natural drive to create, to put things together in new ways.
Yeah.
And to become our best selves.
Okay, so it's like self-actualization.
Exactly.
Okay.
And that creative process,
Uh-huh.
it can happen at any of those levels.
So it's not just about one component.
No, it's about all of them.
Okay.
It can be kinesthetic or perceptual or affective or cognitive or symbolic
Wow.
or even a mix of all of them.
Cool.
And your sources say that creativity is important even when you're older.
Really?
Yeah, it helps you make new connections in your brain,
Uh-huh.
and it improves your planning and organization skills,
Okay.
and it even helps with memory.
Wow, that's amazing.
It is.
Okay, so it's not just about the finished art.
No.
It's about that creative spark
Yeah,
that can happen at any time.
exactly.
So how do we define creativity?
Well, there are lots of definitions,
Okay.
but they usually involve the idea of making something new
Uh-huh.
or something original and useful.
Okay, useful.
Yeah, and useful can mean a lot of things.